Welcome back to Confidently. This is Building Block 3, Market Your Brand, and we are talking about your traffic plan and building out your webinars today. Now, just as a reminder, we're all working through the Confidently Success Map, achieving progress, not perfection, to market and scale your expert-based business. And we're right here in Marketing Traffic Plan. So as a reminder, the 4 highest performing launches for experts online are challenges, webinars, email series, and live events. And the topic for today's training is how to do a high converting webinar series. So webinars are an opportunity to teach and educate your prospects on the value of your brand offerings. And it's basically a class delivered online. They are definitely the most popular way to L2 or L3 your business. Now, webinars can be used for multiple purposes, and just to clear up definitions, they are used to sell your program, they are used to fulfill your programs, they can be used as an actual lead magnet themselves, or the L1, and as an L2 or L3, its purpose is to sell the program. Now, you can do one live webinar, but giving people options for other days and times will help you get more opt-ins. So you want to choose at least one midday time frame, PST, and one evening or weekend time frame, PST, because if you're an expert-based business, typically you are offering your services and programs to people who have potentially day jobs or obviously very busy lives. So you want to find a time where them coming live will be more likely instead of watching the replay, because most purchases are done when they come live. Now, here's another thing. They can also be set up to be evergreen, which means, basically being accessed on demand with a recording of the live webinar. But overall, live webinars tend to generally perform better than evergreen ones, and involve an advanced sales funnel that you have to push a lot of paid and partnership traffic into typically, okay? So if you aren't making $10,000 a month consistently, my recommendation is going to be to do multiple live webinars until you get those results, and then you can turn it into an evergreen, because an evergreen setup is just as effort-based as a live one, because it takes a different level of testing. And that's not the scope of today's training. We're talking mainly about live webinars here, but obviously your best performing live webinar can be turned into an evergreen. Now, here are the key to webinars to set yourself apart. You want to make sure that the name and title clearly indicates something your audience perceives they need from this online class called your webinar. It'll showcase your unique serving proposition while highlighting the gaps that your audience has. You want to have an engagement strategy built into the webinar. So things like follow-up Q&A sessions at the end of the webinar, or even in a different live stream post the webinar. Social media prompts that ask your audience to answer so that they are, also broadcasting for you while the webinar is going on, and using hashtags. Putting the webinar into a private group so that people feel like it's an exclusive viewing or showing, kind of like their own private movie, if you will. And then obviously being able to chat and have dialogue during the webinar. A lot of people actually ask a colleague or a team member, or even maybe their teenager, to help with the chat, to moderate the questions coming in and make sure it feels like a dialogue instead of a monologue. Okay, so here are 3 webinar opt-in pages that you can study. They are actually ours, and all 3 of these webinars have produced millions of dollars in revenue for our company. And we've consulted with many people to get the same results once they hit their stride and do their live webinars and test their messaging multiple times. So the first one that you want to take a look at is my Paid to Be You workshop. This particular workshop was done to support the Master Brand Program and followed the Brand Story Challenge, which if you went through the challenges module in the portal, I talked about that there. And you can take a look at the opt-in page. It's still up. You can go to paidtobu.co, that's co, not .com. And you can take a look at how it was built in order to get as many people as possible into the live webinars. Now, the thing is, at the time of this recording, the world of digital marketing and online selling changes with world events, with new technologies, etc. But what doesn't change is your messaging being strong. So one of the most important thing is that your messaging and your ability to clearly direct people on what to do next is the main thing you want to be focused on when you're building anything really, but your webinars, your challenges, your email series, and your live events, which are the 4 main ways to sell your expert-based brand. This next one was called the 90-minute brand plan, and it was set up to sell our program called Momentum Pro. And this was actually so successful that we started charging for the webinar and having no decrease in people opting in. In fact, it increased our viability of qualified people to then offer working with us from. So that was really, really powerful and exciting for us. We had run this particular live webinar, I want to say 5 times before we really turned it into a paid for webinar, which we call kind of a paid L1. And resulted in millions of dollars in sales. In fact, so much so I actually I call it the webinar that bought my Tesla kind of thing. In fact, my Tesla has vanity plates that say Mo Pro on it for the Momentum Pro program, which we no longer do. It has been replaced by Confidently Pro, which is what the Confident Marketing Masterclass is. And if you're in the Confidently program right now listening to this, you probably went to that webinar or you went to the challenge that I had in front of it. Either way, they were highly attended and also had great conversion. And what I want you to be looking for is the language that I used in the opt-in pages, the promises that were made that people would learn, and taking a look at how we set it up, which I'm going to tell you how to do in just a minute. So here are the launch steps to set up your webinar series. So first, you want to do step 1, which is registering for the webinar. So you need a registration page, or also called an opt-in page. And what's great is tools like leadpages.net give you high converting templates to use as models, okay? So that's why we highly recommend you go ahead and use templates first before you try to build things from scratch. So you also need your webinar title. And in the messaging building block, I actually walked you through a headline and the 3 secrets piece that typically go on the top of a webinar. So if you didn't do that work, or you need to refresh it, go back to that module in the portal, okay? Bottom line, it should be bold and clear to anyone looking at it so they know exactly what they're signing up for. You need to obviously indicate the dates and times of your event and be clear about the time and listing time zones to make it as easy as possible where your audience can attend. You want to put in bullet points of the learning objectives the audience can expect. Be brief, but describe why they should sign up. And also the key benefits. So there are learning objectives and then there are benefits. So list the benefits of learning the objectives you've set out. What is in it for them? What are they going to get out of it so much so it's worth their time and energy? Put any images of presenters. So putting a face to the presenters is a great way to make it more personal. And testimonials. So if you have any testimonials from past webinars or speaking engagements or even from your programs, it's okay to put them on the page. It's good to have that type of social proof. You also want to have a clear call to action button. Specific words like reserve your spot or learn to optimize my content now work better than words like sign up or buy now, like very specific call to action. And then in some cases, future attendees who are already on your email list, as you get really good at building an email list, you can put in what we call a one-click opt-in, which offers them that special one-click opt-in to put in your webinar software, so it allows that they don't have to double opt in like everyone else, okay? Now, step 2, you want to thank them for registering. So you need to build a thank you page in addition to sending them an email. And this page is a reminder and a chance to link to other information. It is a critical step, so please do not skip this one. The key here is literally laying out exactly what they can expect while they're hot in the moment of signing up for your webinar. So things that you may want to consider adding to this page are a video where you're thanking them for signing up and going over what they'll learn to pique their excitement. Make sure you put the date and time reminder, always include that with the time zones, instructions for attending. So maybe you want them to bookmark this page so they can click the link to sign into the webinar later, or any type of instructions. Maybe it's the Zoom link that you give them, or like what are the activities that they don't want to miss at the beginning so that they show up on time. If your page allows you to put clickable calendars to enable attendees to click to add the event to their calendar, that is perfect, because then you don't have to mess with time zones. And social sharing buttons, which is a great opportunity to encourage them to share that they're attending the events, since it will act as another way to promote it. Then also links to other information. So for example, like maybe you're going to give them a workbook, or like one piece of the workbook is downloadable at that point, and you can tell them, make sure you're checking in on your emails because the rest of the workbook is going to come your way right before the training. And maybe some polls and surveys, including asking them, what is one thing you want to get out of this webinar, so that I can make sure that we try to include it in the content, which is so great because you'll start to collect market insights on what they're really looking for. So the bottom line is, creating a thank you page that nurtures the relationship you're building with your audience is necessary so that you can build trust with them in advance of the event, and so that they'll be primed to make the next steps. All right, webinar setup step 3 is set up the webinar page itself. So this is the live webinar page. Now, for some of you, you won't need this, because if you are broadcasting from Zoom, you'll use the Zoom platform, okay? But some people will use Google Hangouts or other technology where you can embed it in your actual site and do it from there, okay? So for some of you, you may not need it, but if anything, you want to set up the logistics. For example, your Zoom page will need you to know that, plus the password, etc. So you want to at least set up the logistics. And some of the things that you want to set up if you set up a webinar page are chat boxes, which will allow them to feel more connected and encourage more participation. Again, some things like Zoom already have it built in. Polls and surveys, again, to get real-time information back when you're doing your webinar. Real-time timed offers. So basically pushing out the timed offer based on the material being discussed. So when you're doing the webinar, there are actually, pop-ups. Now, this is not in Zoom, but in other types of technologies where you can actually just put the link, it'll pop up at a specific point in your webinar. You don't have to get that fancy, to be honest with you, but this is something that is possible if you are more technically inclined. And then any limited offers. So there's a webinar software called Webinar Jam Studio, which allows you to create limited time and limited quantity offers during a live webinar. So including these functions in a webinar, as I said, depends a lot on the platform you choose. So consider what you want to add when picking the tools, apps, and plugins when you'll use your webinar. But the bottom line for this step, it is kind of optional if you use Zoom. If you use Zoom, you don't really need to set this part up except for logistics, but I wanted to show you what's possible if you want to get a little fancier, but definitely do not pick fancy over functional. Functional and getting out there is more important than these bells and whistles, especially if you're not making consistent 10K months, okay? So step 4 is setting up the webinar replay page. Now, some software will allow you to use their code to embed a replay of the webinar so that attendees or registrants who missed the live event can still watch right on your website, or you can embed it yourself. For example, my webinar, the Confident Marketing Masterclass, is embedded on the confidently.me web page. And that's just custom code that my team put in, but you can do that, or you can just put it up in Vimeo or some video hosting software for people to take, and then you can take it down when you create that authentic scarcity, tell them that they have only a limited time to take a look at it, okay? Now, for the most part, you want to recreate the live feeling and enable the person watching the replay to act on the call to actions when possible. So including links to additional opportunities on the replay page can encourage the replay viewer to act. Next is you have to set up your sales page. Now, you may already have a sales page for the product or offer you're presenting during the webinar, but if you don't, you need one, because it'll also help conversions if you make a separate dedicated sales page that's targeted to the webinar attendees. And again, templates like this are available inside of lead pages. I highly recommend using it because it makes it easy, okay? So for the sales page, you need an attention-grabbing headline, which makes your audience desire to know more, a persuasive opening piece where you get more specific with your audience to make them read all the juicy details. You want the details themselves to encourage rapport. So it's a great time to mention the webinar and establish a connection. Then you want to build in information that establishes credibility, reminding the person about what you know and how it benefits them. So basically putting your social proof on the page. And then having bullets and subheadings, because the thing is that you also want to create visual stopping points on the page. Again, templates will help you do this so that they have more meaning and make people want to read them. You also want to have testimonials and proof because your audience needs to see that your product or service works. And this is an excellent place to put testimonials and other customer stories. And this is why if you don't have those yet, I always recommend doing your program with a few people, frankly, for free, so that you can, instead of getting paid in dollars, you get paid in social proof, which you can use then to charge for the program, okay? You also need to obviously have your clear and compelling offer, which is what you're selling, period. So you want to make the offer in a way that's interesting and compelling and showing the benefits and the results the viewers are expected to get, and putting something that helps them feel a reduction of risk. So for, removing any doubt from the viewer by reducing the risk and explaining your guarantee, if you have one, is really important. And finally, a clear CTA. So big, bold buttons that tell them exactly how to take action with descriptive words versus just simple buy now, okay? Now, a lot of this information can be performed with a video inserted into the sales page that is made specifically for webinar attendees. But however you choose to present your offer, it needs to be complete and a full-fledged sales page, okay? So the next step, step 6, is writing the webinar script. Now, if you purchase the Confidently program as a pay in full, or you're in the pro level, you get access to this script that I specifically use for my website. But here's the thing, I'll give you all the steps right here. Number 1, if you want your webinar to get results, it requires that you and the speakers come off as energetic, engaging, and knowledgeable as possible. And it's not like giving a speech, it's more like a talk and teaching. And you want to talk to your guests like you're talking to a friend. You don't want it to be awkward and weird, like speaking like you don't normally speak. So first, you want to engage the audience. You want to welcome them, make them feel comfortable, and want to hear what you'll be talking about. And start off with a relevant story, fact, problem, or question, and tell them what you'll be telling them in short bullet points. Then you want to use interactive features like handouts, surveys, polls, hashtags, and encourage social sharing during the event. And you want to check in your script. You want to actually purposely create moments to pause and check in to ensure that they can hear you, that they're getting, that it's landing, that they're exclaiming their breakthroughs or their aha moments. And using engaging and interesting slides with a lot of pictures really helps. Then you want to pique their interest for more. So end your presentation by providing them with an overview, a summary of what you talked about, plus the next steps that they can take right now. And make sure you follow up immediately, providing the CTA or the contact information to book a call with you if that's what your CTA is, and follow up quickly via email. That should already be loaded up in your CRM system. And these 4 things are how you make a brand experience on a webinar more converting. Now, so give these items a lot of thought. When you build out your slides and you build out your script, ask yourself, am I engaging? Am I interacting? Am I piquing their interest? And do I have something set up already to follow up? Okay. And practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the better you'll do and the fewer problems you'll have, okay? So alongside that, you have to write your email campaigns. So obviously you will take your CRM system like Entreport or MailChimp and set up the automatic emails that will fire off that you've written beforehand, okay? Most importantly, when someone signs up to attend the webinar, you know, you want to make sure that obviously you capture their email and make sure they get all the emails. And you're going to want to make sure that you send reminders, replay information, and you can use email marketing messages as a way to build relationships and promote current and future products. So there are a few different types of emails. One is the pre-webinar emails, which are used for both current and new customers. And you will make sure that you send in one-click options through email for your current customers if your CRM is set up that way. And in both cases, you'll want to send a thank you email, reminder emails, and details about what they will learn during the webinar, plus send instructions on how to attend it. Some other examples of pre-webinar emails that you can send include polls and surveys to collect demographic information, plus invite questions in advance of the webinar. And you want to send out post-webinar emails for those who attended and those who may have missed it. And a few examples of what to send are replay opportunities when it expires. Any future webinars, for example, if you had 2 choices, you can say, look, you missed this one, but there's still one more. And making sure that you remind them the offers that you presented during the actual event. It also helps if you take the time to craft an authentic scarcity email that reminds people of time limits or space limitations of the offer, okay? Very, very important. And you should not do this only once. You should do this a number of times. You know, it basically doors are closing, doors are closing, doors are closing. Because even though that makes a lot of you nervous as the seller, I can tell you that for most people who are interested in what you do, they appreciate the reminder because a lot of people get distracted and they forget. And so it's really important this is the time to accelerate your assertiveness in terms of your email versus holding back, okay? Finally, and I know it's obvious, but a lot of people sometimes forget about this. So you need to sell something on these webinars, right? So you have to connect a buy button with the payment service. So if you have Entreport, Infusionsoft, or any end-to-end system, it will do that basically automatically if you have it already set up. So as long as you have PayPal and one of Stripe or Authorize.net, one of the two, you're good to go. And why is PayPal important? Some people think, oh, I shouldn't do PayPal. I got to tell you, you're going to have higher conversions if you give the option for PayPal. Because also PayPal has an option to actually give the people credit that they will finance if they pass PayPal's financing options, which is really, really nice. Because, you know, then it's not on you to have the payment plan, okay? So here is the mind map for the webinar, which will also be available to you in your workbook. But basically your L1 is going to drive traffic into your opt-in page for your webinar, which you're going to build a thank you page for. And then you're also going to parallel to that, get the immediate thank you email, and then making sure that you remind them that the webinar is coming. And just like in challenges, you want to make sure that this has a story in it. You don't want to just be like, webinar's coming, webinar's coming, webinar's coming. No, you want to create a story and get them excited to show up live and make it worth their time. So take some care in writing these emails. Then they're going to attend the webinar or they're not going to attend. Either way, you're going to offer them what you have to buy, your program, and you're going to build in all the replay emails and the follow-up emails and the cart close emails, whether they attended or not, okay? And remember, you want to build an engagement, live stream content, and hashtags to support your marketing. So the next steps are, let's get going with your webinar. Is your buyer persona needing or wanting a webinar from you? If so, you're going to focus on building on your webinar, not the challenge, not the email series, not the live event. So if you do, go ahead and update your cash calendar, okay? And it's not realistic to finish this in one day. If you do, you are a special kind of unicorn. because I can't even finish an entire campaign in a day. Maybe in like a long weekend I could if I just focused on it. But it's going to take a few days. So you want to make sure that you're very focused and intentional with your time. Okay. So next steps is, if a webinar is part of your launch plan, use the workbook to start checking off the assets you need to build for it. And if you want feedback on your webinar scripts or your outlines, schedule to be at monthly coaching, which is in the club level, or the strategy clinic where you work directly with me if you are in the pro level. And make sure you check out this lesson on your Confidently Success Map and do the next lesson within 48 hours of completing this one. And with that said, I'll see you in the next training.